The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Over half the population of Ontario has had one dose of COVID-19 vaccine. Tonight, what that means for getting us back to normal, whether or not you got an AstraZeneca vaccine or not. Then our Ontario Hub's report on how one northern community is making sure its people are getting vaccinated. And from the price of lumber to whether buying or renting a home is better, we've got the Agenda's Week in Review. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. It's Friday, May 14th, and that's next on the agenda. Mostly the news around vaccines is good and getting better. There are more of them and more people are eligible to receive them. But after the AstraZeneca vaccine was paused this week, those who got their first dose of it have lots of questions. And all of us want to know, are we almost at the end of this? Here to help point the way in Guelph, Ontario, Dr. Kate Miller, family physician and an assistant clinical professor at McMaster University's Department of Family Medicine. And here in Ontario's capital city, Maria Sundaram, infectious disease epidemiologist at ICES, formerly known as the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences. And Tim Sly, professor emeritus at Ryerson University School of Occupational and Public Health. Hi to you all. Maria, I want to start with you. At first, AstraZeneca was safe and millions, especially in the UK, got vaccinated. Then after a few reports of rare blood clots in Europe, distribution was suspended and it was deemed safe. And in Ontario, a bunch of Gen Xers, like myself, ran out to get the vaccine when the age limit was lowered, as those in the older groups weren't taking it. The message initially was get the first vaccine that you're offered. And then the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, NACI, said recently that if you prefer to wait and you're not a frontline worker, if you're not living in a hot zone, you could do that and get the vaccine that you wanted. And now Ontario has decided not to administer any more first doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. When you hear all that, how did we get to where we are right now?
I think that's a great question. And I especially when it's laid out like that, it's really clear that, someone not following this closely, someone who's not a vaccine epidemiologist like myself would look at this and go, well, people don't know what they're doing and they don't know what they want. And that's really quite far from the truth, but I understand how you would arrive at that conclusion. And so what we're trying to do is kind of explain the risk and the benefit of these vaccines in a changing environment. You mentioned how we rolled this vaccine out in the UK and we didn't identify any safety concerns among older people because this blood clot that's very rare is also even less common in older people. So as we ratcheted the age down, we saw the potential risk of that increase. But we also were administering this vaccine in an environment where there was really high community level transmission, especially here in the GTA. And so then it was kind of like this weighing of this risk and benefit where, there was a very small risk of this potentially serious outcome, but then the much greater risk of potentially being hospitalized for COVID-19. And we also know that COVID-19 has with it a risk of blood clots, not the same kind, but a higher risk of blood clot if you have COVID-19 versus if you get a vaccine. And so what we're kind of seeing is this really challenge of weighing this kind of risk and benefit.
The message that people heard was, get the first vaccine that you're offered. And a lot of people, ran out to get the AstraZeneca vaccine. And when the news came out this past week that it was being paused in Ontario, I think there was a feeling of we tried to do the right thing. And this blood clot is rare. But we did try to do the right thing. And now we just kind of feel, I don't know, maybe betrayed, maybe misled. Can you see why, for people who are not an epidemiologist, who might think that, the people in charge actually don't know what they're doing?
I can totally understand why people would feel that way. And I especially understand that given the context of this wording around the preferred vaccine versus a not preferred vaccine. This has like a very specific scientific meaning, and then also kind of a very, slightly different colloquial meaning And when we feel like, okay, you told me to go get a vaccine, and I got a vaccine that you said maybe wasn't preferred, and now you're saying not to get it at all. What did you actually want me to do? And that's completely understandable and kind of a logical conclusion to draw from what has happened. The best I can say here is, if it were me, I would have been really happy to get the AstraZeneca vaccine. And if it were still available today, I'd still probably get it today if it were available to me. The risk of the blood clots is quite a bit lower for the second dose of AstraZeneca. So hopefully the people who've already had one dose of AstraZeneca, you're already out of the woods, and you'll be able to get a second dose, fingers crossed, later this summer.
So Tim, let's talk about risk, because I think when people did hear the news, and I posed the question on Twitter, would you still get the AstraZeneca vaccine for your second dose, knowing what you know now? And people are saying, I'd rather take the risk of getting the vaccine as opposed to exposing myself and my community to the potential of getting COVID. So how much of this story, Tim, is about risk analysis?
It's actually more concerned with risk perception. We do the analysis very well, number crunching, there's no shortage of that. But the important thing is perception. Perception is everything. As a teacher even, it's very important to be able to put yourself in the back row and that little person who's wondering why you should even be there, and to say, what I've just said, how was that received by that person? Did it make sense? And in this particular case, some of the good analysis probably confused people rather than helped relax them a little bit.
In what ways?
We have two reactions to knowing about risk. One is an immediate aversion. We need to run, take ourselves and run away. The other is more of a calm, relaxed analysis approach. But unfortunately, the immediate reaction kicks in straight away. And so if they hear something, even any risk, doesn't matter what the size, doesn't matter how many zeros there are on the size of the risk. If there's a risk there, let's go the other direction. And so, yeah, they did the right thing. You and I, many of my family have taken the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I would still encourage them today. It's a remarkably good vaccine. It's probably better than we would have suspected at the end of the phase 3 trials. But it does have this small, remember, 4 weeks ago is not where we were last week. 4 weeks ago, all the indicators were going in the wrong direction. Everything was looking pretty bad. Hospitals were getting ready for triage, something we didn't ever expect that we would be in. In the last 7 days, things have changed quite dramatically. And so the analogy is a little bit like the ship is now moving toward the rocks. We probably will hit the rocks at some point, grab a life belt. Doesn't matter whether it fits perfectly, doesn't matter whether the whistle's blowing, but grab any life jacket. That was the good advice back then. Now, we've negotiated around them. The risk of hitting them is a little bit less. We can say, okay, choose a really good life jacket, make sure it fits properly and the whistle works. Different message, and it was appropriate at the time to say that.
You mentioned that this is more about perception of risk perception. Are we as human beings naturally good at risk analysis, or is it something that we need to be taught?
We in Canada have done, we've produced some of the best risk analysis people, but we haven't really done, and nor has anybody else in the world done a really good job at risk communication. And of course, we have to understand the risk perception before we get to the communication part. And there's a long literature in this, and I'm particularly interested in how we've done. If we look back at some of the mistakes that were made for 2003, the SARS-1, and look at how Justice Campbell wrote that wonderful report in 2006, he said, should Ontario be faced with another health hazard in the same way, let's hope we don't make these following 7 errors. And unfortunately, we seem to have made the same mistakes again. We haven't learned much from them. And many of those were perception problems as well. Yeah, so perception is everything.
Perception is everything. And Dr. Miller, something that's been talked about during this pandemic is that family doctors haven't been involved in the vaccine rollout. So when we talk about risk analysis, the people who know us best, perhaps with our health, we haven't been able to engage with them in the same way. Do you think that the government missed an opportunity?
So I think it's unfair to say we haven't been involved. We weren't involved in the planning, who and when and how, but we've been very involved in all of these risk conversations. I don't have a clinical appointment these days that doesn't involve a conversation about vaccine in some way. But certainly we are the experts in talking to the patients we know about their risk and their context. The numbers, which are a big part of it, how the world is changing, which is a big part of it, but also what risks are you more comfortable with and not more comfortable with? Would you rather stay on the sinking ship than take a faulty life belt? Do you care about the color of your life belt? There's many factors that come into risk decision that aren't just the numbers, that aren't just the pure science, but also who you are, what you worry about, what decisions you've made in the past, and what's important to you. And we've been doing that all the way through, and certainly a lot of it in the last week for people who either had AstraZeneca or now don't know what to do with AstraZeneca not available.
Okay, so just to follow up with that, then how do you explain risk analysis to your patients in a way that they can understand when information changes so much?
So part of it, I think, is explaining how the information has changed, right? Why is it different now than it was 8 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago? Why we have an alternative that we might not have had. So all of that, giving them a sense of why the changes has happened so that you have more confidence in the change, that the science was good. I agree with the recommendation to pause AstraZeneca, but why do I agree? And why did you make a good decision a month ago when you chose to get it? So helping explain the change and the reason for the recommendations, helping give analogies to other things. So whether it's the lifeboat analogy or decision making whether to go out when there's a weather forecast that has a 20% chance of rain, giving them a sense of how they do risk assessment in their life all the time. And giving them analogies, and then helping them figure out what are the factors that matter to them most. Is it safety? Is it efficacy? Is it timing? And then obviously putting it in their context. Can you protect yourself from COVID, or do you have to go to a job where you fear that you're going to be exposed? Because that changes your risk, and that changes your priorities for risk assessment.
And Maria, something we've been hearing a lot about how we're going to get to a point where as communities we're safe is this concept of herd immunity. And I think for a lot of us, the first time we might have heard it is when Boris Johnson was saying that was how the UK was going to deal with COVID-19. And most experts seem to think that it was a bad strategy. Now we're hearing that we're aiming to get to herd immunity through vaccination. What does herd immunity entail? And can we actually get to that point through vaccination?
This is a great question. So herd immunity basically is, let's say that I can't be immunologically protected against a pathogen. So I'm technically at risk, but every single person I interact with that could give that pathogen to me is immunologically protected, so they can't give it to me. And so that means that I'm protected. So that's kind of where herd immunity comes in. We kind of have this kind of synergistic effect, this community effect where we're protecting each other because most of the people within the community are protected. You can get that from a vaccine. You can also get it, in theory, from natural infection of certain diseases. The reason why
so if you get COVID-19, then you're kind of create a herd immunity in that way?
It's possible. And the reason I say in theory is that, first of all, we know with some coronaviruses that your immunity against that coronavirus that caused maybe a milder illness goes away after a while. And so we don't know how long your immunity might last. We don't know how robust it might be. And we also know specifically for COVID-19 and for SARS-CoV-2, it can cause this really, really serious, severe disease. And it doesn't just pose a problem to you, it also poses a problem to the healthcare system. And that poses problems to other people who might be seeking care because they were in a car crash or because they had a heart attack. And so there are these kind of like these community level risks. So the reason why a lot of epidemiologists push back against the idea of herd immunity from natural infection is that it posed too much of a threat, first of all, to our communities. It was a huge number of preventable illnesses and deaths, which is really antithetical to epidemiology. And it really sort of would have shook the very foundation of our healthcare system, and that's just not acceptable risks. When we talk about vaccines, we do know that herd immunity is possible to achieve for some vaccines, and we think that it is likely possible to achieve for COVID-19 if we still have remaining very high vaccine effectiveness against circulating variants. Existing evidence suggests that that may be the case, but we do need to know more. And if we get very, very high uptake of those vaccines.
So lots of ifs, and Tim. And so if we don't get to all the ifs, what happens then? What happens if we don't reach herd immunity?
Well, if you look at what's happening in India right now, treatment and appropriate attention is just not able to be given to most of these people. So you're seeing what would happen if you just let the pathology carry on doing its normal routine and hoping we get to a herd. We will get to herd immunity. It's the way that all pandemics and epidemics eventually end. There was a common misunderstanding. It was some kind of a policy that you could bring in. It's not a policy. It's a natural progression. But what you see in India is what would happen if you just let it go. There were people saying, just like let everybody become infected, and if they survive, they survive. If they die, and whoever will be left will be immune. Well, that's a very clumsy way of doing it. That's what actually happened in in the 1918, because we didn't have treatment or tests or anything else. But now we have vaccines to the rescue. So this is the way to go. So we need to reach that. And we have seen it's wonderful to see the public now talking about things that epidemiologists were keeping to themselves, like herd immunity, transmission threshold, and so on. But we've had to see a change, an increase in herd immunity because of the variants. The original one, we were doing the calculation somewhere around 61%, give it roughly, very roughly, of the community would need to be immune to stop the thing spreading. Now that's boosted up to the low 70s now with the new, but we can still get there. We're moving toward that.
Maria, Tim mentioned the variants. Why is the speed of immunization important when it comes to herd immunity?
The way that I like to think about this, and I hope this is helpful for listeners and viewers, is the reason that you want to invest in like a retirement account earlier on. The same amount of money that you invest earlier on is worth way more at the end than that same amount of money when you invest it 10 or 20 years later. And the reason for this when we come to public health is that the number of illnesses you can prevent today means that you prevented double that number of illnesses in the following week or in the duplication period. The fewer transmission events that we have, the less likelihood that we have the emergence of new variants of concern. And the fewer cases that we have, the more resources we have to sort of zero in on the cases that do need investigation, that do need contact tracing. So we really are benefiting so much from attacking this as much as possible, as early as possible.
Dr. Miller, as a family doctor, what role does vaccine hesitancy play in our ability to the patients that you see? How do you talk to them about that? And have you heard from your patients who might be more hesitant to get a vaccine after this pause in the AstraZeneca announcement?
So I think most of us are seeing that the majority of our patients are really eager for vaccination, right? It's been a hard, long year, and I know that vaccines is one of our best ways out of it. All of us have a really small group of people that I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to talk into vaccines, and that's the good thing about herd immunity is we don't have to get 100% vaccinated, just a large majority of us. And then I have a lot of patients, and I think all of us are seeing this, that are on the fence. They want a vaccine, but they're anxious about the vaccine. They have questions or hesitancy because they're worried it's happened too quickly, because AstraZeneca has definitely made everyone a little more apprehensive, although it's actually made them really keen about Pfizer, which is what we have available right now. So in some ways, it's pushing them to say, oh, well, now that I know I won't get AstraZeneca, I'm going to sign up because I don't have to worry about getting the wrong vaccine. So those are the people where those conversations around risk, where we're challenging the myths, whether we're doing it in one-on-one or through media interviews or on Twitter or our family practice websites, to really address those people that are eager to have a vaccine but have questions or worries, and set them aside so that they get the vaccine.
I think a lot of people watching this and listening to this want to know when are we going to reach herd immunity? And Tim, you said that we are going to. I'm not going to ask you to look into a crystal ball or anything, but we're year 2 of this pandemic, and I don't know. There's so many. I think people have more questions now than they did at the beginning. I could be wrong, but when do you get a sense of like when we would be able to reach herd immunity?
It's been, of my calculation, 423 days we've been living under this dark cloud. But I heard this morning some excellent, we need some excellent news, some good news. And I heard something today from Dr. Bonnie Henry in BC, and I think should be echoed across the country, that in the last couple of weeks, the people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19, 98% were not vaccinated at all. 1.7% had one shot, and 0.2% had both shots. In other words, the overwhelming evidence is right there in front of us that the vaccine works, and it is the way out of this mess. Now, what we have to avoid doing is the mistake that unfortunately we've seen in this country and all around the world, is when we begin to relax the restraints too early and too soon. It's still not beyond the realms of possibility. We could get another variant which transmits as effectively as the 117, the one we're dealing with now, but also has increased pathology, lethality, and also avoids vaccines. That could happen at any point. So let's carefully stay the course that we're on, because the course we're on is the right course, and it's the rapid way to get out of this mess.
Maria, the CDC announced this week that fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks anymore, and that's indoors and outdoors. What do you think of that decision?
I think it's a really interesting decision. There's a lot of conversation happening about whether you should feel free to take a mask off, and whether you should perhaps pressure people who are still wearing masks to take them off now that they don't need to. My take on this is that pandemics don't end with a bang. We don't just wake up one day, suddenly the pandemic is over. They really end with a whimper. And what we've seen, from every other infectious disease that epidemiologists have tried to prevent, the last inch is just as hard as the first 100 miles. And so in my perception, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with continuing to wear a mask and continuing to be cautious. And while sort of using the knowledge that people have learned over the course of this pandemic, their understanding of herd immunity, their understanding of vaccine-mediated protection, their understanding of transmissibility and contagiousness, those are really good tools that we have now. And I hope that people do feel comfortable using them as much as they feel comfortable saying, you know what, I know the CDC said what they said, but I'm just going to still wear a mask for a little bit, and that's okay too.
Dr. Miller and Tim, I saw both of you nodding. Dr. Miller, what do you make of that decision?
I think there's a lot of risk in it from the perspective of relaxing too quickly, feeling like we're in the clear before we are, right? But it's true, there's not going to be fireworks to tell us this is over. I am fully vaccinated. I'm well past my second dose. I am still wearing a mask everywhere where I am in the same room as someone else, both because I want to continue to protect myself. I need to stay healthy. I made it this far. I don't want to get COVID now, but also because we're not enough of us fully vaccinated for it to be safe yet. And we're a long way from fully vaccinated. Second doses, we make different decisions here in Ontario than they did in the US about timing of that. And so if we all stay the course, as Tim said, we can get to the end of this much faster, much easier than if we relax too quickly. We've seen already how poorly that goes.
And Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with my colleagues. Remember that the public is still possibly thinking these vaccines are, as we became familiar with polio and measles and mumps, which essentially infer a lifetime protection. Think rather like the influenza vaccine, which maybe lasts a year, or if you work with animals, the rabies vaccine, which you need to take every year or two, or tetanus, you need to booster every 10 years. This is not one of those lifetime things. So that's one aspect to think of. Secondly, I think every surge has followed a too rapid, too hasty, too clumsy removal from the surge before. We saw it in Melbourne, we've seen it in India, we've seen it in Britain, we've even seen it recently in Singapore. They've done very well up to now. So we've got to hold this course and not, I think the idea in the States is perhaps a little too hasty. I'd hate to think that they get into a fourth wave, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
I think there's so many things to factor in because children under a certain age can't even get vaccinated yet. But I think there's a lot of envy on this side of the border about what's happening in the States. When you look back on the last year or even the last 3 months, what would you change if you could? Maria, I'll start with you.
What would I change if I could? I think the thing that has been true throughout this entire pandemic for me is that I want people to see the importance of investing in healthcare infrastructure. I think, we just as we said earlier, there's a report, We have these guidance documents for Canada, it was post SARS. For the US, it was post H1N1, where we said, okay, this could have been really bad. It was not great, but it could have been a lot worse. Here are these structures that we can implement to prevent this from happening again. And then we didn't follow those structures. I really hope that now that everyone really has public health terms in their vernacular, that they understand the importance of these mechanisms, that we really make a dedication to investing in this infrastructure.
And Dr. Miller?
So I think I'd pick two things. One is improvement around communication. And I think the AstraZeneca pause is a great example of how sound science does not always get communicated well and creates lots of anxiety that is needed. And I think we have to recognize that our population is far more educated about this than any time before, right? That we are all now armchair epidemiologists. And the second thing I think is impatience and complacency. Our third wave was not necessary. We got to the point where we thought, see, we've done this. We figured it out. We relaxed too early. We paid the price. And I think the whole herd immunity vaccine conversation, we have a risk of doing that again. And I really hope we don't.
And Tim?
Okay, I'll just point out that we've seen 3 coronavirus events in the world in the last 20 years, SARS-1, MERS, and SARS-2. There will be others. I just hope that we learn from this one, especially in being prepared. We're at about 3.7% fully vaccinated in this country, way down the list, about 40th position in the world. The US is about 40% fully vaccinated, 10 times better. We got to be better prepared.
Tim, Maria, and Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your time. I can say you're excellent communicators and your messaging came through. We do really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks very much.
Foleyet is a small town in northern Ontario, about 100 kilometers from both Timmins and Chapleau. That means it's not exactly vaccine central, but that hasn't stopped a resourceful caregiver at the nursing station there. Nick Dunn covers the Northeast for Ontario Hubs, and he joins us now from Sudbury to explain. Good to see you, Nick.
Thanks, Jan.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the situation in Foleyet and the small town itself. What do we need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So for quick context, Sudbury is about 400 kilometers north of Toronto. And then to get to Foleyet from Sudbury, you go about 280 kilometers up Highway 144. You cross the Watershed 144 gas station, the only gas station there. And then just before you hit Timmins, you take a left on Highway 101, you go another 100 kilometers, and you're in Foleyet. So it is quite far away from the beaten track, if you will. It's a town of about 200 people. And yeah, it's very far away from the nearest vaccine clinic, 100 kilometers away from Timmins, 100 kilometers away from Chapleau, which itself is quite far away from any major centers. So very difficult in principle to access a vaccine readily.
Well, let's talk about vaccines. So you were on a hunt to see how small towns were vaccinating their residents, and you stumbled across a woman by the name of Brenda Vandal, who is a supposed vaccine hunter. Tell us about her story a little bit and how she's helping people get vaccinated.
Sure thing. So Brenda's the nursing station secretary in Foleyet. So as soon as the vaccine rollout occurred, she began calling people in the town. You know, these people are not only patients, but they're also neighbors, friends, family, what have you. And, you know, she's just saying, hey, you know, there is a vaccine available in Chapleau. At this day, at this time, I can book you. You know, you just have to give me some of your information. And that's what she's been doing. She's vaccinated at least 50 people, or she's helped vaccinate rather 50 people by booking their appointments and making sure that they have transportation to get there and just kind of filling out all the information for them, getting through the hassle of calling or going through the online booking systems.
I do got to ask, why does the town, you know, with the size of 200 people need such a dedicated service?
Well, there are a number of things to this, Jan. I mean, you know, I think public health units, the province, have done a really great job informing people, you know, about vaccines, how to get them, where to get them. But this is primarily online. You know, in a town of Foleyet, you know, there are a lot of people who may not have readily available internet access. You know, they might be a little bit older. So that information isn't always there. And if you're going through more traditional forms of media, radio, television, I mean, if you're taking the national news. It's often Toronto, GTA, Ottawa, out west. You're not really hearing about what's going on in Foleyet, even local news. That's Sudbury, Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie, and Thunder Bay, North Bay, right? So having that local touch, people who know each other, being able to reach out in such a way and using those local health services as a kind of a point person to get people to get vaccinated is very important.
Now, is this situation unique to Foleyet, or are you seeing this across the vast region that you cover?
Yeah, so I think Foleyet is a bit of a unique situation where it's especially remote. It's 100 kilometers away from anything that you can really call a town, right? But there are many other towns like Foleyet. There's Gogama on Highway 144, that's quite far away. Gauganda, Elk Lake, Metashawan. I mean, these are very small towns, typically, no more than a few thousand people, quite far away from either the Trans-Canada Highway or, a town that has a clinic, right? And in the Northwest, it's the same, Pickle Lake, Atikokan, you name it, right? And across the country, we have such a large landmass and, most of our population is urban, but, you add up all these small towns of 200 people and you're starting to talk about thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands nationally, right? So, these are people who need vaccines like everyone else, whether you're urban, rural, what have you.
Now, there's a difference from needing vaccines and actually getting the vaccines. Are there challenges for these nursing stations in getting the vaccines actually to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain logistical challenges. I know special people within public health who have the right qualifications can they can only transport them. They have to handle them in a very specific way. They have to be transported in certain temperatures. And, again, a place like Foleyet, I just mentioned that it's quite a drive from a place like Sudbury, or even Chapleau as well. So there are challenges in getting these vaccines. I mean, it's not impossible, of course, but it's certainly an added effort, than distributing a vaccine across clinics, pharmacies within a city, right?
And when we talk about other challenges, are we hearing anything about the challenges of immunizing people? And I want to bring up also, is there a little bit of hesitation as well in this region?
I don't think we've seen any real hesitation there. I mean, Brenda says that it's been overwhelmingly positive. And if you look at the vaccination rates for the surrounding areas outside the city of Greater Sudbury, on average, it's on par with the city. So they've been really successful at vaccinating people and getting that access to vaccines by having those kind of local connections. They've been using local implementation committees. So they're taking, the family health team, the clinics, the pharmacies, even the municipalities themselves, and saying, where can we put these clinics? What is the best throughput for these areas? And how can we serve people? And having those people engaged and involved, they can also reach out to their local patients, constituents, communities, right? So it's been, it's not without its challenges, but there have been real workarounds in an area like public health Sudbury districts, which is massive, right? It's, almost, it's larger than, most of Southwestern Ontario, and it's just a single health unit. So there are logistical challenges, but they've been getting around them by hitting those local centers and making sure that there's local communication throughout.
You touched on, the issues of traveling. I understand that the government does have some sort of program to help people with the cost of that, correct?
Mm-hmm. So there is the Northern Ontario Health Travel Grant, and this is something that Brenda actually called up. She called up the Ministry of Health to make sure that this could apply for vaccine appointments. I don't think this was something that many people anticipated, and I can't necessarily blame them. But the Northern Ontario Health Travel Grant offers money for travel, transport, and accommodations, often for people who may need surgeries or healthcare in Southern Ontario. But Foleyet is especially a place where it's far away enough in either direction where you can certainly be eligible for the grant. So that's been a big help because, I mean, a 200-kilometer round trip isn't cheap. You're looking at least $40. It's probably a little bit more if you're driving a truck, which if you're in Foleyet, let's be honest, I mean, you're probably driving a truck. So it is important to make those things accessible. And, cost of transport is a very real thing. This isn't a TTC token we're talking about here, right?
Now, apart from Brenda's help, what else can government or public health officials do to sort of help with the vaccine rollout in Northern Ontario?
Well, I think generally, making that access to transportation accessible is key. I mean, whether you're in a rural area, remote area, or an urban area, I think that is a common theme throughout, making sure that people are able to efficiently access things without necessarily, having to pull out, a whole lot of money out of their pocket or take up a whole lot of time, right? As far as health units, I think the implementation committees that public health submarine districts has used across its regions, from places like the Chapleau area, the La Cluche foothills, Manitoulin Island, Sudbury East. I mean, this has been a very effective way for them. I mean, on average, again, we've seen a vaccination rate on par with the city of Greater Sudbury. So I think that speaks to the success of getting these local spread out communities to buy in and to have the same access, relatively speaking, as someone in the city.
Nick, I want to thank you for this, and we'll see you again on the next one.
The agenda this week looked at whether it's better to rent or buy a home today, if COVID-19 vaccine patents should be temporarily waived, and asked if taming big tech would hurt democracy. We begin with why lumber prices have risen during this pandemic.
Mills were preparing and dealers were preparing for very, very weak consumption. And then what happened after the pandemic hit? Well, everyone was forced to stay home with these stay-at-home orders. So they were forced to work from home. And they couldn't spend their time or their money anywhere else. You couldn't go to sporting events, which I guess perhaps for some people in Toronto was actually okay. You couldn't go to...
I'm not sure, but I think that was a shot. Actually, I think I am sure that was a shot.
Yeah, sorry about that. So no sporting events, no cultural events. You couldn't go to restaurants. You couldn't go on vacation. You had nowhere to spend your time or your money. And you were stuck at home. So you were looking around your home and you were seeing all the things that needed to be fixed. And oh, by the way, your kids were doing their schoolwork from home and you were doing your work from home. So if you wanted to add on, this was the time to do it because you needed that extra space. So in part for people looking for additions, alterations, improvements, this was really the time when they really wanted to do that. And then on top of that, interest rates plunged. They got very, very low. So it became affordable to do that. And then a final component would be on the new home construction side. People wanted to get out of the cities. They wanted to leave high density living and get into more lower density living situations. So the new home construction side just really surged. So we had a situation where the supply side was declining and the demand side was improving. You flash forward a couple months and mills, once they realized that the demand was real and was sustainable, they tried to increase production, but then you ran into COVID quarantine restrictions on how they could increase that production. So you have one person who catches COVID at a mill, and then that person has to isolate. You have, everyone who came in contact with that person has to quarantine for 14 days. And, a sawmill isn't what it was 20 or 30 years ago. They're high-tech pieces of equipment, and they need highly skilled labor to run those mills. And if you have someone who's out of work for 14 days, you can't just hire somebody to come in and replace that person. So the mills just simply weren't able to keep up. Their production wasn't able to keep up with demand. And that came at a time after 2 months of inventory drawdown. So the inventory wasn't there. And so that really, in a nutshell, describes why prices got so high.
It sounds like a real perfect storm, to be sure. Sue, let me do a sort of a real life example with you on this right now. I presume your company is in the process of building homes in and around the London area right now. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Are there times when you're not sure whether you actually have enough wood left or can get access to it to complete the construction of a new home?
Yes, we have run into that. And certainly in particular, certain products like engineered floor systems are very challenging if you're able to get them at all right now. So we are having to sort of do a lot of on the fly changes to our homes. If we have to change a floor system partway through where we were expecting to be able to get that material and then now we can't, we're having to re-engineer houses even sometimes after they've started to be constructed, resubmit those plans to the city for review. and wait until that review can come back out of city to continue that construction of that home. So it's certainly adding delays to our timing, delays to homeowners being able to move into their homes, and a lot of frustration.
Do you see customers sort of kicking the can down the road and deciding that they're not going to purchase that new home, or they're not going to do that renovation or build that deck or a gazebo in the backyard because they want to wait for lumber prices to come down?
I've heard it a little bit. Kind of one thing we hear is, like, we get a lot of calls. And to Paul's point earlier, when you're asking who's making all the money, I can say it's not us necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting in here every day diving into money like Scrooge McDuck. You know what I mean? Doing backstrokes into $20 bills or lighting cigars with $100 bills. That's not what's going on here. People will only pay so much. So we on the retail end are having to eat into margins, because I think when you're working with customers every day, you know what people will pay and what they can kind of stomach. And I think we're starting to get to the point where we're getting very close to, that teetering point where basically people will just start saying no. And I think, unfortunately, it's getting closer and closer to that point.
If you can make it work, if financially you can make it work, if you're not going to be spending 90% of your income on housing, and that you can do it reasonably so, is it still the philosophy that you urge people to buy if they can?
I do, but there's so much that goes into that. So just listening to what you even said, as long as you can afford to, which means you're not overspending on your fixed expenses, there's still ample room in your budget every single month for a regular life and to save money for retirement outside of just relying on your house. If you're in that situation, then homeownership can be great, because number one, you're forced equity that you're building every single month by paying down your mortgage. And if housing prices do continue to rise, you're going to partake in that growth as well over time. And second of all, you could use it as collateral, as leverage later on. You can downsize. There are more options, but it's not the only option. So, when I'm talking to people, I usually say, if you can afford it, I do think that, buying something can be a big part of that wealth pie. But the real education comes around. The real choice matrix I see is being house poor and buying versus renting smart. And that's where I change my tune, because that's really the choice where a lot of people find themselves. Because if we can all afford to buy and still do all the things, then why not? But it really comes down to being house poor versus renting smart. And renting smart is, I completely agree, is critical. But there are lots of issues that people come to me with their fears about renting for the long term that we can talk about later with like policy that might be able to help on that.
Sure, but let me, I want to better understand what house poor means. So let me do a quick follow-up with you on that. I know once upon a time, you aimed to spend about a third of your income on your mortgage. That was sort of the benchmark you wanted to hit. So today, if you don't want to be house poor, what's the sort of reasonable maximum you ought to be aiming to spend on a mortgage as a percentage of your income?
So I think that still holds as a rough, if it's coming in around 35% of your take home pay, it's likely that you can probably float the rest of it. But there's so much more that goes into that. So I find that that's just like a jumping off point. So when I'm running those numbers with clients, I'm looking at all of your fixed expenses. So not just the housing, the insurance, the property tax, the utilities. What about life insurance? What about disability insurance or health insurance that you're paying? What about, you might have car payments. What about if you're going to have future children and they're going to be in daycare and there's $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month going out? So there's lots of other fixed expenses in our life that doesn't get put into the total debt service ratio calculation that, a lender is going to use to give you a mortgage. So when I'm looking at someone to say, are you house poor? I'm looking at what are those fixed costs of your life that make you feel safe and secure and happy. So even whether or not that's even a gym membership, that matters. If you can't do that and that was a huge hit to your lifestyle, you're going to feel that if you can't do it, and you might do it anyways. And then we're looking at credit card debt. So looking at those fixed expenses, then also making sure that there's enough disposable income that you can feel like you can live a normal life for yourself. So for some people that's much more than others, but a mortgage is 25 to 30 years. You don't want to have to be on your best financial behavior for decades, because eventually what I've seen time and time again is that overstretch, the assumption that you're going to make more money later on, but the amount of income that's coming in doesn't go up by enough to kind of combat the cost of living that and like lifestyle inflation that can happen. And then you have people that are going into credit card debt. So long and short of it is, house poor means there's not enough money to put aside money for retirement in addition to paying your mortgage, and that you're so tight every month that you feel like you're constantly in a state of credit card debt. So, it goes up by 3,000, you hammer it down. It goes up by, 1,000, it hammers it down because you can never get ahead in that emergency account. That's house poor.
Does this suggest that if it goes forward, supply is going to boom overnight, and that these countries that were have supply will almost immediately therefore get it?
Not at all. In fact, one of the other things that probably went wrong early on was the sense that this was a silver bullet, and that if only IP were freed up, supply would follow. We know for a fact that vaccine production is a highly complex process. There are about 280 steps in creating the mRNA vaccine. And then there's the question of transportation, storage, and logistics. So let's be clear that this is a daunting task. But a necessary first step is to have the IP available. We know that some countries might not be vaccinated until 23, 24. So we're not going to have global herd immunity for several years now. By the way, that's the way it was with smallpox eradication as well. It took 2 decades. If we're in it for the medium or long haul, then the fact that a TRIPS waiver wouldn't immediately unlock supply, I don't think is that concerning. So long as we have enough supply in the next 2 or 3 years, and there is capacity in many advanced developing countries, then I think we'd still be in a good space.
All right, Jason, if the TRIPS waiver is not going to increase vaccine availability in the immediate run to those countries that need it most urgently, what's the point?
Well, I think we need to come back to a few things. So the first is that the TRIPS waiver is not and should not be restricted to COVID-19 vaccines. So I agree, there are no magic bullet solutions here for COVID vaccines or really for any health technology. And I think that we need to be clear that that's not what anybody is suggesting. There are a number of steps ranging from removing intellectual property barriers through to technology transfer, scaling up of manufacturing supplies and fill and finish capacity and so on that goes into increasing the available supply of COVID vaccines. And all of those things need to be happening. We can't look at any one of these as being, a magic bullet solution that is going to solve this supply-demand imbalance in isolation. We need a full suite of interventions to effectively increase manufacturing capacity around the world. And I think, there's a few things that flow from that. One is that this is not a conversation for COVID vaccines that should be restricted to just, how do we increase manufacturing capacity? That capacity is increasing, but what hasn't changed is where vaccines are being produced. So we also need a diversification of vaccine manufacturing capacity into different parts of the world to try and address some of these access constraints.
Because you're an economist, Rohinton, I want to go back at you with this one. For those who oppose the waiver, and you can understand there are honorable people who do oppose the waiver because they're concerned about what might happen to economies in the countries where these drugs originate. They are concerned about negative impacts on companies. They are concerned about negative impacts on ability to innovate, all of that kind of stuff. Are those reasonable concerns in your view?
They are reasonable concerns, but there are also reasonable responses. To begin, vaccine development is not something that the private sector does on its own, taking on all the huge risks and therefore deservedly receiving all the huge profits. A lot of the development and subsidization of vaccine has come from governments, especially the US government, and philanthropy, notably the Gates Foundation. So the cost-benefit calculus is quite different in light of those investments that are public. Second, the International Chamber of Commerce released a study a few months ago, earlier this year actually, that found that the total cost to the global economy of not fighting the virus everywhere will be about $9.2 trillion. And this is going to be felt around the world, just as we in Canada continue to be in various versions of lockdown because of variants coming in and inadequate vaccination. So yes, there might be some losers, but I think that's overstating it.
Let's share some public opinion that we have on this issue and find out where Canadians roughly are on it. The Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, which is of course Daniel's outfit, they had Nanos Research do some polling on this to find out Canadians' attitudes towards the so-called behemoths, as Minister Guilbeault referred to them as. And here's what they had to say. 83% of Canadians support or somewhat support legislation to hold companies such as Facebook and Twitter legally liable for illegal user-generated content. And then we at The Agenda had Public Square Research and Maru Blue ask a differently worded question about online speech, and we got this answer. 76% of Canadians strongly or somewhat agree that the government needs to regulate hate speech on social media. Okay, I think, Daniel, we can infer from that Canadians are not necessarily the most libertarian group in the world, but beyond that, what would you read into those numbers?
Well, I would read a couple things into those numbers. The first is that the kind of cottage industry of overnight broadcasting experts that has, exploded on Twitter and in the columns of newspapers in response to Bill C-10, I think represents actually a very small, almost fringe view relative to the Canadian public, which actually takes a much more reasonable, measured approach and recognizes that something like the Christchurch massacre, where a guy in New Zealand went into a mosque and filmed himself murdering 51 people, and that was live streamed in Canada on Facebook, that has no place on TV, and that has no place in our lives on the internet. And I don't think anyone believes that punishing a company like Facebook for broadcasting something like that is an infringement of free expression. But I want to come back to one point that Caroline made, which I think is very important, about her assertion that this is an expansion of government's control on speech. And I think that, again, coming back to the kind of overnight group of people who have taken an interest in this, and following on Navneet's point that anxiety or uncertainty around this is very understandable, Bill C-10 actually restricts the CRTC's powers over individuals on social media. The current Broadcasting Act is completely indiscriminate. It doesn't distinguish between user-generated and professional content. It doesn't distinguish between television or internet. And so the only thing standing between us and the CRTC regulating all digital media right now is the CRTC itself. And Bill C-10, for all of its problems, and it has many, many problems, actually introduces protections saying individuals who are uploading content to social media will not be regulated like broadcasters, and that part of the bill was upheld. It stays. So actually, this is a restriction of the CRTC's authority with respect to governing these services, and actually introduces protections for individuals for the first time that don't exist today and that will not exist if Bill C-10 is defeated, as many people are calling for it to be.
Caroline, you want to come back on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Liberals have been saying that this is about applying Canadian content rules to streaming services and social networking platforms. The problem is most social media content is generated by individuals. And while Bill C-10 used to include a clause that exempted user-generated content from the bill, it was explicitly removed by the Liberal-controlled committee that was reviewing the bill. So that's the subject of my concern. And furthermore, when opposition parties pressured the government to put this bill before, against the charter to ensure that it was compliant with the charter, that motion was denied and ultimately under serious pressure
did they finally go ahead and do so? So my question is, if this is about regulating Canadian content, why go there? Why capture user-generated content in the legislation, and why not ensure that it is compliant with the Charter? That should be one of the government's first priorities. They should be excited about ensuring that right is protected.
There is no argument about whether the Charter should be applied, and sending the bill back to the Justice Department for a charter review is completely fine. But there are a couple of mistakes, I think, or errors in what you just said. First of all, the Liberals don't control the Heritage Committee. It's a minority parliament. The opposition controls the Heritage Committee. Second, I would add that the protection for individuals uploading content stays. What was removed was a provision that said any company whose content is user-generated cannot be regulated. And so it's important for us to separate. We can protect individuals from regulation without protecting Mark Zuckerberg from regulation. And this is an important distinction. And you're right when you said that the bill was sloppy at the introduction, because this provision should never have been there. We should have protected individuals while still allowing the Broadcasting Act to apply to Canada's largest broadcasting companies. That distinction is very important, and people are forgetting there is a protection for individuals. And by the way, the opposition, not the government, controls the committee right now.
That's just some of what we covered this week on The Agenda. For more, including the full conversations, you can visit our website, tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda. And that's it for this Friday, May 14th, 2021. On Monday, we'll examine Ontario's health spending under COVID and beyond. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thank you for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. Have a great weekend, and Steve will see you on Monday.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism. Ontario Hubs are made possible by the Barry and Laurie Green Family Charitable Trust and Goldie Feldman.